Question 1. In what ways does your media product use, develop, or challenge forms and conventions of real media products? I spent an extensive amount of time before planning researching real local newspapers. Through my research, I have developed a strong understanding on the conventions and features all local newspapers use and how they use them effectively. A new developing trend I've noticed in not just local newspapers, but all newspapers, is how much they have changed and adjusted to technological advances. Previously, they all featured very bland colours and lacklustre journalism, and now modern age newspapers display bright colours and creative graphology. Observing and noticing the notable change, I made sure through planning and production I would follow this new convention to make it as realistic as possible. One new feature which is being very frequently used in modern local newspapers is promotional banners. This is an example of local newspapers adapting and adjusting to the magazine-esque style. This may be due to a number of reasons. One reason, and probably the main reason, is the advances in technology. Previously, this attribute was not possible, but now we have the means to experiment with different styles. Also, as technology is having advances, we also see an emerging amount of social medias becoming into existence. This has meant newspapers have had to adapt to this developing change. Nearly all newspapers have some form of social media where people can contact them on, so to promote this, they include URL links and banners on their front page and inside pages. Another reason is the purpose. Before, local and national newspapers were strictly used to inform people on current affairs. However, many local newspapers are not just for information but also for leisure. An example of a local newspaper using this feature is the Bath Chronicle. Bath Chronicle is a local newspaper I took for inspiration throughout planning and production. Through my research on the Bath Chronicle, I learned that their front page layout is structured and displayed the same with each issue. I was heavily inspired by their promotional banner when designing mine. In the background of their promotional banner, they always have a blue grading colour, which is in the same colour used in their masthead. I really like the style of having features use the same colour scheme, as it made their front page look very aesthetically pleasing. Using gradient colours of their masthead for other features was a convention also used by the North Somerset Times. This is why I made sure I would include this important feature. Through analysing local newspapers in my research, I discovered a recurring feature many local newspapers have is double-lined mastheads. I found the reasoning was that as these were local newspapers and only concerned a regional area, many local newspapers use the first line to establish their location. This is very important as it allows them to communicate to consumers what and where their content regards immediately. From my research, I discovered that the first line of the masthead is usually displayed in much smaller font and sometimes in a slightly different colour gradient. I found this feature used in the Bristol Post and the North Somerset Times. However, newspapers that do not use double lines usually establish their location in a unique way. For the Daily Post, North Wales, instead they only use one line, and in between the words they have included a flag of Wales. The reason for this is that the Daily Post is a very vague name and can be applied to any location, so the flag can display what region the paper concerns. Discovering the two main ways local newspapers display their masthead, I was torn on which method to use, so I decided to incorporate both attributes when designing mine. After deciding I was going to name my paper Bristol Bulletin, I used Adobe Photoshop to create my idea. The two lexical items were separated on double lines, with the Bristol written in much smaller font. Discovering that dark navy blue was the most common colour used in all newspaper mastheads, I decided on using this colour as well, to make my paper look as realistic as possible. The Bristol was written in a very dark blue, and the bulletin was in a navy blue. This was very aesthetically pleasing as the colours complemented each other very well. I spent a very long time deciding on what I wanted my logo to be, as I was aware the logo many local newspapers use is significant and important to the location. Living in Bristol allowed me to develop many good ideas. After settling on using an iconographic image of the famous suspension bridge, I incorporated it into my masthead. As you can see here, I placed the image behind the text. This looked very realistic to an actual local newspaper masthead, as the logo filled up any unwanted space. Me using the two methods of designing a masthead together conformed to the usual conventions of local newspapers. After spending extensive amounts of time analysing the structure and layout many local newspapers use and why they format their paper like that, the initial thing I did when creating my local newspaper was to create a layout. This was very useful as it allowed me to create an effective layout used and proved by a successful local newspaper. It is also very beneficial in terms of time management. When researching the conventions of local newspaper, I discovered many of them have advertisements for furniture on their front page. As I wanted to make my piece as realistic as possible, I decided on creating a furniture ad for my paper. As you can see here, I was heavily influenced and inspired by the furniture advertisements featured in the Bath Chronicle in terms of positioning, colour and information. My furniture advert was on my sofa. I decided on creating a furniture ad of a sofa as I knew this would be something which would appeal to a large number of people and wouldn't be restricted to one particular audience. The main convention that I followed when creating my local newspaper was my main story choice. As I gained knowledge from my research, found out the types of articles they include on their front page. As it's only a local paper and only uses stories that are relevant to the area, many of their main stories are dull and would not be interesting to a wider audience other than local people. This is why I decided on a story I knew local residents would be interested about but would not concern the wider population. My main story, as you can see here, is of a local couple that recently won a large fortune after winning the lottery, but the house was robbed. A feature which is heavily used by many local newspapers, such as the Bristol Post and the Bath Chronicle, is the use of images with removed backgrounds. As I knew this was a very effective and eye-catching convention, I decided on using it in my piece. For my promotional banner, I used an image of an iPhone with the background removed. This involved me using Adobe Photoshop. I decided to use an iPhone as this is a product many people have, and promoting that the newspaper is also available via mobile can entice people to purchase it. Some other conventions that I used on my front page that I discovered from researching my real media products were bylines and jump lines. The main two local newspapers I researched regarding the inside page was the North Somerset Times and Wandsworth Guardian. A feature I particularly liked from the North Somerset Times was at the top of the inside page they had "This Week" written in large capitals. They decided on using two different colours for each word to differentiate them. I really liked how this looked, so I took inspiration. As you can see here, in my inside page, I wrote "The News" in the same location and the same size, with the same style of using two different colours. However, in terms of the whole page layout of my inside page, I was heavily influenced by the Wandsworth Guardian. They have a layout which I really like, so I wanted to replicate it, but also bring some individuality. As you can see here, at the top of the inside page, they have pasted a short story on the left margin, and have the main story to the right of it with a large image. I attempted to recreate this in my product, as you can see here, using the same style, using the same font. I also really enjoyed how they separated their stories using lines. By recreating the same style and adopting the aesthetic of the Wandsworth Guardian, I successfully created a realistic local newspaper. However, in the Wandsworth Guardian's inside page, they have a very large advertisements on the left-hand side, which I did not particularly like. So for my piece, I placed my advertisements at the very bottom of the page. The image on their inside page also influenced me. For their image, they have used a mid-shot of the subject the article concerns. To make my piece as realistic as possible, I decided on using this shot type for one of the images on my inside page, which was of an image of the Clifton Suspension Bridge. Another common convention of local newspapers is to have a wide range of different shot types. I took inspiration from the Bristol Post. In their newspaper, they feature many different types of images, using different techniques of mise-en-scène in order to represent their story. What I noticed was that the majority of their images are either people who look very powerful or very vulnerable. This was the case for the majority of the local newspaper I researched. Knowing these are the types of stories that are eye-catching and gain interest, I wanted to include this in my own piece. As you can see here, in my inside page, on my article of a homeless singer who went from rags to riches, I took a mid close-up shot of the individual. This made my piece look very realistic as I followed the common convention of local newspapers. Spending time researching the North Somerset Times, I noticed they frequently include advertisements for conservatories or other home improvements. This may be due to them tailoring advertisements for their audience, which is the older family generation. As I wanted to make my piece as realistic as possible, I created one for my own. This was relatively simple as I was able to photograph the conservatory immediately, and I was influenced on how the ad in the North Somerset Times was displayed, written, and the use of colours. Another convention I followed in my product was the stories. After spending time researching the structure of real local newspaper stories, I discovered a common convention of all of them is to follow the inverted pyramid model. This is a model which many journalists agree is important in writing successful and realistic stories. So to make my product as realistic as possible, I followed this model for all my stories. Upon researching local newspaper billboards, I noticed a common convention is for them to have some form of technological product featured. This is done as it is an easy way of promoting the online version of their newspaper. This is why I decided to recreate this in my billboard. Using the convention followed by many local newspapers, made my billboard look very realistic. Some other conventions in my billboard that I followed were including an image of the masthead displaying promotions and having a URL written directing them to the website. When conducting research for my second ancillary task, the radio advertisement, I was not so lucky. Finding very few radio ads promoting newspaper made it very difficult to follow or challenge any conventions. So to gain knowledge on what radio ads consist of, I spent time researching existing radio ads promoting either a product or service. Discovering that most radio advertisements are around 25 seconds was very helpful, as it informed me on how long my script should be. Another convention I found of all radio advertisements, they all include upbeat, happy background music. To make my radio ad realistic as possible, I made sure to include this feature in my product. I will now play my radio advertisement. Do you want to know the latest news in Bristol as soon as they happen? Would you like to know important events happening in your city? For only 45p, you can pick up a copy of Bristol's greatest newspaper, Bristol Bulletin. It is available at most newsagents, or you can download our new mobile application for free and have a chance of winning £1,000 worth of Apple products. Don't miss out.